Good afternoon, everyone. So, after some of the great panel discussions, fireside chats, inaugural session, some exclusive presentations, we are here with a very interesting panel discussion. The topic for this panel discussion is Future of Digital Transformation, the Digital First Mindset. So, this session will be moderated by Mr. Abhishek. He represents PwC. And with this, I'd request my speakers, Shri Ajay Chakti ji, who is the Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Administrative Reforms, Government of Arunachal Pradesh. Welcome, sir. I
Thank
would
you, Ji.
like to
Thank you to the entire team.
I'd like to welcome Dr. Lalthal Moana, who is the Chief Information Officer and Joint Secretary, Department of Information and Communication Technology, Government of Mizoram. Welcome, sir.
Yes,
I'd like
thank
to
you.
welcome Mr. Santulan Chaubeji, who is the Joint Director and CISO, Department of IT, Government of City of Delhi. Welcome, sir. I'd like to welcome Revati Kumar ma'am, who is the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director, Goa Electronics Limited. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, dear.
I'd,
Namaste.
I'd like to welcome Mr. G. Venkateshwar Rao, if he has come, if he has not yet joined. I'd like to welcome Mr. J. Vidyasagar Reddy ji, if he has joined. He is still not joined. I'd like to welcome Mr. Brijesh Miglani, who is Senior Cybersecurity Strategist from Netscope. Welcome, Brijesh.
Yeah, thanks, Fahim.
Abhishek,
Hello.
over to you, and I'll take a backstage.
Thanks, Fahim. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, all chairs. Uh, Digital transformation, as we all know, is an actively the journey started in late 90s, when first digital channels, websites, connected organizations, and customers. The digital processes that emerged to support customers and citizen interactions. And as the organization's digital ambitions grew, they soon needed dedicated digital teams to manage the social, mobile, and other channels. This enabled organizations to leverage digital data on their activities and interactions, connected to customers, connected to citizens, suppliers, other stakeholders. As for the governments to make better use of the vast amounts of information, the administrators across the length and breadth of the country started to connect all processes and devices into networks and seeing the potential in connectivity. This was way back in early 2000 when MMPs got into the picture. And seeing the potential of the connectivity, the governments have begun to focus on digital platforms, connecting all system players rather than the traditional method of operating. In fact, showing a great amount of flexibility, the governments of today are even beginning to experiment with new digital ways of operating, trying to leverage data more effectively, create greater, I'd say, agility and resilience. Practically all digital transformation initiatives of today are being built on so-called third platform technologies and solutions, including mobile, cloud, big data, analytics, and other social technologies. These accelerators like IoT, robotics, 3D printing, next generation security, they depend on the third platform and expand their capabilities. And in the rapidly scaling digital marketplace, they have become the key growth drivers for all the organizations and the governments, be it state governments, city, ULBs, as well as the central government. Which now brings us to the topic of today's discussion, which is the future of digital transformation, the digital first mindset. And this has become more relevant after the quick improvisations that we as a society, as a nation, had to do after the pandemic hit us. And to discuss these initiatives, the different approaches that we took, and the future of such strategies, what are the roadmaps going to be, we have with us a very distinguished and esteemed panel that Fahim has already introduced to us. So, starting with very basic, if I could invite the panelists on uh, the topic that with the technology landscape changing so rapidly and the changes that we have seen in the last 5 years have been tremendous. Has it become more challenging to incorporate the relevant technology elements during the initial phases of digital transformations, or would it rather would the governments and the organizations take an alternative approach where they incorporate these as we evolve? So, if we could start with Srimati Revati Kumar, would you like to uh, come in? Because I think GEL capabilities, as we all know, they include everything from project management, application development, system and network administration, the hardware supply and maintenance across an end to end of the spectrum. So, what would your take be on that, ma'am?
Last kind of the panel that is here. Very happy to be a part of this. Coming to your question, Abhishek, that what I understand is before the pandemic and after the pandemic, what has changed exactly? As a state here, and I think as a country and as a world, we all have through this pandemic understood the importance of data hugely. Because while we were dealing with this whole pandemic, planning procedures, any kind of policies, we realized, all of us sitting on this side of the table, that not only having data, but using a good framework and designing a framework where this data can be shared across by departments. Agriculture needs data from the municipality. Animal husbandry needs data from transport. So, as of now, we like it or not, I think we are already done with the connectivity issues, at least in our state. That is the hardwire connectivity or the mobile connectivity. Some way or the other, the whole system is connected. One step ahead, what we realized is now the data sets of all of these departments and the government working as a whole unit as one is the prime requirement with which we all need to look at. I mean, whether we talk about AI, whether we talk about IoT, any of these new technologies can be any which we can look at. The major goal should be to kind of, the framework should work seamlessly for any service delivery chain in the government. So I feel this is one major aspect that we all are looking at currently. So Goa in itself implemented something known as no visit to no document, whereby initially, though we had a system where all the services were on one board, now we moved to another step where we asked the citizen, if you want to avail any service of the government, now you need not attach the same document which is issued by any other department of the government. To give you a small example, if a farmer comes for a subsidy, we ask him, कि अच्छा, you give your form 1 and 14, you give your plan, you give your partition order. Who's issuing all this? We only at the end of the day. So bringing all these data sets to one framework and trying to exchange data, that is something that I think a big learning has come through the pandemic and which will be going far out. Technologies will keep changing, obviously. Yes.
Sure, ma'am. And ma'am, going forward, especially let's say the next couple of years, has the government of Goa specifically have they charted out a plan, let's say 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, or a roadmap of 10 years, let's say, with some identifying some problem statements and where does technology figure in that, ma'am? With regards to citizen engagement, the end mile delivery of the benefits to the citizens. I'm sure there would be a lot of improvisations that have happened.
Absolutely. So, Abhishek, our state mainly depends, our economy mainly depends on two industries. One is the mining and the other is tourism. And sadly, so for the last, the mining has closed down and the pandemic hit our second industry, tourism, very badly. So, in this whole thing, what happens is, as you rightly said, what is the plan? I'll just give you an example. In the main industry, that is tourism, we have started off on a project of AI where complete information about each of the tourists coming into the state is going to be mapped, and all kind of analysis majorly to ensure that the services that as a industry we give the tourists is what is depends on what they want rather than what we have to offer. It was like when, like if we know now that in the month of December we get tourists from, say, France, we will probably have a good French theater, kind of a workshop happening, some kind of cuisine festivals happening around French cuisines, or the depending requirement of the tourist. So, analyzing our whole data and understanding what is the requirement of the tourist and then designing your policies, you know. So, these kind of things are in the long term for a few years we have planned for the major industry. And of course, as I said, we have something known as Goa Online for the state, which is a common service delivery platform where pre-pandemic, it was a unified platform for all the services, and now we have gone one step ahead and said that now you do not need to visit because of the platform. One step ahead, you do not even need to give any documents to take your services now. So this is a very important, but it is of course at least a 3 years completion plan, because getting all the departments concerned on the single unified platform to share their data and identifying unique identifiers across the departments is also a major challenge. Because I, as a farmer, may have a Krishi card which identifies me. Somewhere else, as a medical record, I don't have this information. So, linking all of this database with some common identifiers, that's how these are the two important aspects
Yes.
on which we are working.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very insightful, ma'am. Very insightful. In fact, you spoke about service quality, making sure those services are available throughout. So, if I may request Dr. Moana, sir, with service quality and availability becoming the top priorities for any digital ecosystem, especially the governments nowadays, do you think it is about time that the governments transition from simple compliance based procurements to their RFPs, from there to a more SLA driven approach? And what do you think are the pros and cons of the same, sir?
Actually,
Mohan.
this service quality.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This service quality and availability is, of course, the top priorities in any digital transformation, for which the government should be equipped with state-of-the-art infrastructures to enable to provide 24 by 7 public service delivery with at least 99.8% uptime of the system. And in order to achieve such an uptime, the service level agreement needs to be signed between the government and the system integrator. If the system integrator failed to provide a government services with an uptime of 99.8%, and the penalty should be immediately imposed against payment of services. And this is very, very important for service availability for the public, actually. So during the time of this, taking of the project, this SLA agreement need to be signed. So based on this service level agreement, actually, generally, when we implemented e-governance in the state, we used to hire a third-party auditor. So the third-party auditor audit our system based on the service level agreement. So that is the mechanism we adopted here in Mizoram. It is very important, other than
Yes.
this transition from compliance-based procurement.
Yes, sir. I'm sure, sir. I'm sure. And with the coming from a state like Mizoram, sir,
Yes.
that offers a very unique set of challenges, whether it is the terrain or accessibility or the population spread, which is generally very sparse. how has digital as more than a technology wave, a mindset, digital mindset, has helped the the adoption of technology and subsequently the inclusivity with regards to the citizen engagement, sir?
Actually, in Mizoram, particularly, let us say in northeastern state, we always have faced the problem that is the connectivity.
Yeah.
Digital connectivity issue is the biggest challenges in northeastern state, particularly Mizoram. I think it will remain this issue till the central government decentralize its power on telecommunication sector or otherwise implemented this telecommunication infrastructure in consultation with the state government. But
Yeah.
generally, when the BharatNet project was launched, the central government never consult the state government. So centrally, they are actually they plan and implement centrally. So we don't have a thought in mind because we have experiencing with our state terrain and geographical locations. So Mizoram, particularly, the terrain is so difficult and it is hilly area, and the road is very narrow. And when the optical fiber network is laying underground, it's created a lot of problem for the people while traveling. Not only that, and also due to the landslide and during rainy season, particularly, it's always disrupt this optical fiber network underground. So we suggested to central government for laying optical fiber overhead actually. So till today, this Bharat network is not yet implemented. It was started way back in 2012, but till today, no village have been connected with optical fiber network. This is a very, very important for digital transformation actually. If we are really going to make a transformation digitally,
Yeah.
then telecommunication network is the first and foremost important to have this kind of thing. So there are a lot of negative impact on this kind of thing. Without connectivity, the digital transformation cannot be taken place. The digital transformation entirely depends on the telecommunication, without which public service delivery could not be materialized, particularly in those villages. So due to this, then there is always a digital divide. Then we need to inclusive of those people. This is actually a problem in Mizoram generally. Though we are having this possible digital accelerator, of course, COVID pandemic is one of the driving force to
Yes.
accelerate the digital transformation. All the institutions started to introduce online classes and online examination. Most of the government's office also started using video conferencing for conducting online meeting, webinar, etc. Due to this reason, the demand of the bandwidth also increases from 200 Mbps to 300 Mbps. At the same time, the demand of telecom service are also increased double, and the quality of service is in demand. So this happens in Mizoram, particularly.
Right, right. I'm sure there has been a lot of progress that has been made in the last 5 to 10 years, sir. And I'm sure the governments of today are taking cognizance and taking necessary steps to fill in the
Yes.
gaps in order to have a seamless service delivery, which we also have with us Ajay sir, Ajay Jagdish sir, from Arunachal Pradesh. Sir, I would assume that you also must have faced a similar set of challenges in working in Arunachal Pradesh, sir. Sir, what would you suggest, sir, could be done to to bridge the gaps that have just been they're just described by Dr. Moana, sir. Also, if you'd like to talk about a few initiatives that the government of Arunachal Pradesh has undertaken in the last 5 to 10 years, and where do you see those initiatives taking the state in the next 5 years or so, sir?
You are talking of the past broadly is similar to Mizoram. Infrastructure aspect, I am talking. If you talk of infrastructure, there are at least three critical aspects. That is computing power, connectivity, and storage. Connectivity is the most important. In entire Northeast and in most of Arunachal Pradesh, the soil is very loose. So for 6 months there are rains, and rains also imply that there will be landslides. So connectivity is a major issue as in Mizoram. So Arunachal has taken many steps. It has initially asked Railtel to implement this project of OFC cable. Even now, 88 towers, 88 places are connected through OFC, and these were installed by Railtel. It had abandoned the work due to problems as stated by Moana, similar problems. Then we have taken alternatives for connectivities, also other alternatives. The most crucial is VSAT. So VSAT, about 470 plus places are connected, Gram Panchayats and small places, they are connected through VSAT. So many districts, about 17 districts are dependent upon VSAT as of now. Then the third aspect is infrastructure along the highway. So Airtel has about 129 towers, so which are helping. Now, if you want to know the current situation in, let us say, areas bordering China, Anjar district, for example, where the first sunrise of India is there. At the border, you will not get signals. Whether you call BSNL, the towers are not there, or if the towers are there, their capacity is very less. And the Chinese infrastructure, the Chinese towers, their telecom network is working in border areas of India. That is the surprising part. So now the government has taken lots of steps. Tender has been issued for under USOF, and 4G network tender is there. It is not 5G network. So let us hope this time we are able to manage it. As regards steps taken by Arunachal, there are two aspects. One is the services part, ease of delivery, that is, and another is entitlement. So we have gone through Service Plus. We don't have a e-district platform as such. We have Service Plus, and many of the services are being delivered through Service Plus. But the population is very dispersed, and they are near the centers of administration. So they prefer to go to the place and get it done easily. Tribal culture is totally different from mainland culture. They prefer to help each other. The culture is so nice that even if your house is facing some problems, it has to be refurbished, then the entire clan will come and help you out. That is the type of culture. So when it comes to delivering services, similarly, the people come to the office and they are treated just like brothers and sisters. That is a unique culture of Northeast, which I have not seen in mainland at least. Coming back to the entitlement part. So we have a right to time-bound delivery of services act, which ensures that your services will be delivered in time. But usually these are not required because people are treated like brothers and sisters. There is no such difference like administration on one side and people as subordinates on the other side. No, there is no such culture. Then there are other aspects apart from the strictly IT aspects. We are using geospatial in a massive way. Our entire systems are being mapped. They are being, for example, if you want to find an area where there will be good agriculture or a good place for kinnu cultivation, or for you want to develop a model village, so you will request NESAC. Northeast Space Application Center is there in Shillong. So that is the advantage we have, and we are getting lot of guidance. We have our own team in SRSAC, that is State Remote Space Application Center. So lots of initiatives are being taken in the geospatial area, which is a must. The only problem is generation of 3D models. Here, You cannot take so much survey by drones, etc. There is canopy of trees, and weather is not good most of the time. So we are finding it difficult to collect data on our own. We are dependent upon data of Government of India. That is the geospatial part. So some to summarize, one is the service part, one is the entitlement part, and side aspect of this IT initiatives is the geospatial part. Thank you.
Also, sir, also you spoke about the community harmony in the state of Arunachal Pradesh, and I'm sure it's almost the same in most of the northeastern states, sir. I've had the privilege to be in a couple of states at least, and I saw that myself, sir. And you also spoke about how people in hinterland operate, especially in northeastern, sir. Do you think, sir, uh, uh, we we had better focus on smart villages first and cities later, because villages form the core of our nation, sir? And uh, because there could be at least some level of uniformity with regards to smart governance, whether it's in a village or in a city. I think it's more visible in a village, sir. And if so, can smart governance, which is easier to attain, be a prerequisite to smart cities or smart villages for that matter, sir?
So
And
the smart,
this aspect of smart governance, can it facilitate sustainable development to any extent, sir? Especially in hinterland areas, sir.
now there are two aspects about the smart city projects. Yes, Arunachal Pradesh has smart city in Itanagar, smart city in Pasighat also. There are projects. So these areas are well connected. They have lots of services. But when it comes to hinterland, we have to think in terms of infrastructure cost, the ROI part. Now, area of Arunachal Pradesh is about 83,000 square kilometers, and the population is hardly 15 lakhs. Now, the area is roughly how many times? 55 times that of Delhi, and population is a fraction of Delhi. So any investment in Delhi, capital of the country, will yield its benefits, but it has to be justified in Arunachal Pradesh. So when you talk of going to village, every village, it's not so easy. BSNL has come, they tried optical fiber, OFCs were installed, but they were abandoned, the projects were abandoned. So unless this connectivity part is sorted out first, we cannot talk of smart villages. Thank you.
Okay. So, what alternate approach do you think, sir, can be adopted to ensure inclusivity, at least as far as these villages are concerned?
No,
Because that, I guess, form the core of Northeast, sir.
first part is physical connectivity, good road and rail that is being almost achieved. Then the second aspect regarding digital connectivity or broadband you are talking of, VSATs are able to do reasonably good part of the connectivity task. And even video conferences are being held through VSATs. So this is the current situation. If you talk of projects like Google, which they were talking of balloons floating in the air, I don't think they have succeeded as such. And if you talk of laying cables below the roads, it's not really feasible here. And if you talk of laying overhead, rest assured that in the 6 months of rains, these will get damaged. So VSATs is a good alternative, but very costly, very costly. Thank you.
But then I guess, sir, at some point in time, we'll have to make that investment. It
It
better
is
be
being done
now,
slowly. It is being done slowly.
because I think the entire region has been waiting for too long.
As I said, tender has already been processed and 4G network under USOF. So let us hope for the best. Thank you.
I'm sure, sir. I'm sure. Which then brings to me to somebody who has been on the other end of the spectrum. We have the IT advisor to the government of Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh has been spearheading most of the digital initiatives right since the start of our own careers. We've been hearing about Andhra Pradesh. Do we have sir here?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. So, sir, I would be very keen to know, because Andhra Pradesh has always been among the front runners. I mean, how has COVID pandemic changed the course or the roadmap that the government of Andhra Pradesh may have undertaken, sir? Also, how how receptive has the government of Andhra Pradesh been to the new age technology, the cutting edge technologies, emerging technologies like AI, ML, IoTs for that matter, sir? Your views on that, sir?
Sure. Good afternoon. Hello to the fellow panel members. It's I got a few minutes late here. I was in a meeting where we were discussing the digitization of all of the land records. So I caught some of the uh, information that my previous panel member was presenting about the surveys and how to convert the data into maps and make it usable information. So same situation, we are doing a comprehensive land survey, a resurvey, if you will, after I think more than 100 years. So taking help from Survey of India, and then designing an enormous project to digitize all of the land parcels, all of the survey numbers, and have the digital records, which would then mean the issues related to the land disputes and who owns what. That's largely they are going to go away. Then the transfer of property, purchasing, registration, all these things will become so much easier compared to how things are now. When once ownership is established and digital land records are preserved in a secure manner, things will it takes a fraction of the time to either do transactions or to do transfers or splitting. All the processes that we are currently thinking of, they'll become so much easier, transparent, hassle free, fewer disputes, and corruption free, if I may say that. And the services that people are currently undertaking, if you need something, you have to go to your mandal, which tahsil might be the parallel word, to deal with the government revenue department officers. AP, as you may be familiar, has established this organization of grama and ward sachivalayam. So secretariats at the village level to serve people in the village. One secretariat per approximately 2,000 households. So we have about 15,000 of them, about 3,000 plus in the urban areas, and nearly 12,000 in the rural areas to serve all of the communities. So people should be able to get these services at their secretariat, Grama secretariat level. We started this thing off about a year and a half ago with 540 services that are digitally delivered to citizens at their village level. Just imagine the ease of not having to go outside of your village. You're going into your secretariat, your Grama Sachivalayam, and there are approximately 10 assistants, each of them responsible for one or more departments. They take your request, and most of these requests have SLAs, service level agreements, where they should be delivered within a set number of days, or something's over the table on the same day. So this is the digital journey that we have undertaken after our Honorable Chief Minister Shri Y.S. Jagannath Reddy Garu came into power. And on Gandhi Jayanti date on the same year, 2019, he has inaugurated the Sachivalayam institution at, like I said, about 15,000 secretariats across the state. And the following Republic Day, we launched the digital services in the Sachivalayam. So a technology platform where department services are integrated onto the platform, accessible to all of the Grama Sachivalayam employees. And then the workflow from the request takes them to the last mile functionaries, as well as all the way up above the chain, the hierarchy, to the officers. So, and then over the last year and a half, we've been improving it and expanding on the services, as well as automating it as much as possible. Your point about how COVID has changed the mindset, in corporations as well as in government, what used to be unthinkable before COVID, something like meetings, they were always in person. Citizen requests, they were always in person. You couldn't call up something, right? You had to go there, present your documents as duplicate or triplicate paper copies. And files are paper, so you don't know where a file is. It would be moving from person to person in the office as a paper file. So there is no transparency, there is no traceability. Citizen wouldn't know where his request is. From that, when citizens saw during COVID, during lockdown periods, things had to be done remotely using technology, trying to digitize as much as possible our processes. The acceptance was more or less automatic. Not all across the board, not 100%, but to the extent possible. Government officers and government employees were also trying to work from home. We still have restrictions, right? It's not 100% back to normal. So for a long time, they were 33% or 50% strength working, which means only half or less were in the office. The others were in their homes, still trying to work from their home, connect through laptops, and try to do the work through e-office. If you imagine sometime back, what we were used to, people taking printouts of emails so they could file the hard copies. From that mindset, we have come now to e-office and trying to have a paperless office environment. So files go through e-office. Now we know where a file is. We don't need to wonder where is this file stuck and need to ask government office employees where a particular file is. So there is accountability, there's transparency, there's ease of work, and there is speed of getting things done, processing. So all these things, I think, would have happened regardless. But because of COVID, it's almost like they took a quantum leap to come to usage as well as acceptance. Of course, we have to make sure that security and privacy, confidentiality, these considerations have to be met, which we are doing in parallel. But we use this calamity as an opportunity, at least from a digital perspective, to think digitally and to accept the digital world as the future. And people, once they have seen the convenience, you can make requests, things happen online, you can pay, all the things that required people to physically go and take time from their regular workday or regular life to dedicate the day to getting something done from the government. Now they don't have to do that. So the ease, the convenience, it has made an enormous difference. So the digital mindset too, this is not taking a manual paper-based process and putting it on the computer. What we are telling departments is, please don't take your existing process and give it to the IT team and ask them to digitize it. In other words, put it on the computer. No, take this opportunity to rethink, innovate, redesign, and re-engineer your process. If you're doing things certain way, with X number of officers looking at a certain file and it taking so many days, think, is it necessary for 10 people to review this? Maybe not. Maybe the number could be lower than that. And whatever the regulations say, obviously we have to follow the statutory guidelines. But after that, re-engineer the process, make it more efficient, faster. And this has what has resulted in lowering the SLAs. Some things which used to take 2-3 weeks now can be done in 2-3 days. Why? Because officers have realized we don't need to have so many touch points, and the files move electronically, and people get notifications when something come into their inbox, so they can work on their file knowing that this is the priority and this is what we need to do. And so this is exciting times, and trying to do more and more, providing services. In corporate world is the same, they are doing the same thing. So from healthcare to certificates, revenue related transactions, and then requesting government services, welfare schemes where we are able to provide direct benefit transfers to their accounts, looking at the beneficiaries, eligibility criteria, all these things. There's so much that's going on, and using technology to support government work and to provide services to citizens. As I said, I've talked a lot about all these things that are going on. If there's anything specific that we need to look at or talk about, I'm happy to do that. But this gives you a general feel and an idea about all the things that are going on across, not just in AP, but in our sister state in Telangana, but in also other state governments. And one other thing we have seen, this is the last point I'll make, is governments, teams, states have realized we don't need to reinvent the wheel. If I need to do something, I don't need to start from scratch. I'll look around and say, what's the other government doing? Who is ahead of the curve on this one? And then we talk to them. They talk to us. We share information. We share ideas, and also the plans and the blueprints that we have done. We have a grievance redressal system called Spandana. This is the brainchild of our Chief Minister Garu. So Karnataka government sent a delegation to us to study our thing. We gave them a one-day workaround of how we designed it, how it works, how we are implementing it, and how it runs. So they were extremely happy to adopt that. Of course, they can make changes to suit their needs, but then they don't have to recreate the process, right? They use something that's working well here and adopt it to their state. So that is the kind of stuff that helps all the states across the country to come up and mature in the digitization process.
Fair enough, sir. I guess you have answered most of the question more than I could have asked for. You spoke about not reinventing the wheel, which brings me to my other esteemed panelists from the state of Telangana, sir, your sister state, sir. To Shri G.T. Venkateshwara Rao, sir, and also L. Ramadevi. Sir, for a newly formed state like Telangana, sir, how difficult or easy was it to continue and augment the existing digital infrastructure, the processes, associated processes, sir? And how did it affect the vision and the execution of the digital transformation roadmap that you would probably have undertaken, sir?
Yeah, respected moderators, colleague panelists, officials of Jammu Kashmir e-governance participants. Good afternoon to all, and thanks for the opportunity. See, Telangana had many platforms which it got from the combined state. So in the last 6-7 years, there was a conscious, attempt and a continuous work by the IT department, by the Honorable Minister for IT and the Principal Secretary, etc. So the whole emphasis is that we should, take the service delivery by the government to the next level, because as all of us know, that there's a lot of interaction between citizens and government for many services. For example, issue or renewal of driving license, issue of income or community certificate, issue of renewal of passports, filing of tax returns, etc. So, over the last 2 decades, the way citizens and government interact for the service delivery has changed drastically. Manual systems to computerizations to e-governance to m-governance. So the government of Telangana's focus, especially in the last 3-4 years, was, on the latest, that is m-governance. We are looking to something called presence-less, contactless, paperless, anytime, anywhere service delivery, primarily through mobile and smartphone. And it, as a part of that, it uses all the state-of-art technologies like AI, ML, deep learning, big data, etc. And some of these are modeled on the Estonian service delivery platform called X-Road. I think some of which you must be aware. Now, what we have done, I have about 9 minutes video of what has actually been done. That would explain better than me speaking about it. Raman Mishraji, can you place the video? This video was presented to the
after year,
members of
Telangana
Parliament.
has been adjudged as one of the leading e-governed states in India. What has been keeping the state ahead in the race with its peers is the vision of a digital Telangana. and its execution under the leadership of Honorable Chief Minister Shri K. Chandrasekhar Rao and Honorable IT Minister Shri K.T. Rama Rao. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people and for the people, said Abraham Lincoln. In line with this, citizen convenience with complete transparency should be at the center of governance, along with citizen service delivery. Presently, Estonia, a European country, is very near to this goal through their famous Axe Road platform. Citizens visit government office only for 3 important services relating to marriage and purchase of immovable properties. All other services are in presenceless and contactless manner through smartphone and computer. The Government of India sends senior officers to Estonia regularly to study how this was achieved there. Striving towards this vision, Telangana government has started exploring the use of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, big data, blockchain, drones, etc. in the government. Authentication of citizens' identity is a key prerequisite of service delivery by government departments. For example, at airports, security verifies the identity of passengers before letting them enter the airport. At examination centers, the identity of students is verified before allowing them to enter the premises. Be it for renewal, change in address, or to get a duplicate driving license issued, license holders have to visit a designated transport office. Similarly, government pensioners have to submit an annual life certificate by visiting their office, bank, or Mi-Seva center for biometric authentication. A passport holder needs to visit the passport office to submit the details for the renewal of the passport. Voting process in the country demands physical presence, and the million-dollar question is whether voting in general elections can be done through smartphones. In all above examples, physical presence is insisted historically to perform 3 manual checks. First, the name in the application form with the name on the ID card. Second, the photograph in the application form with the photo ID card and the face of the citizen. Third, an indirect check of looking at the person present. ITENC Department of Government of Telangana started exploring in early 2019 whether the above 3 checks can be done on smartphones through an intelligent IT application with the help of artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, deep learning with the same efficacy as that of a manual process. AI, ML, deep learning technologies have made huge progress in terms of speed and accuracy in the last few years, giving hope to the possibility of this vision. After a lot of research and study, an innovative solution called Real-Time Digital Authentication of Identity (RTDAI) was developed. RTDAI provides an easy, convenient and correct authentication of citizens' identity through a smartphone, thus ushering in the utopian objective of governance through presenceless, that is, providing contactless and paperless services to the citizens anytime and anywhere. ITEC Department and Transport Department, Government of Telangana have developed the Friendly Electronic Service of Transport, FEST, which is built on RTDAI platform. FEST allows the citizens of Telangana to avail numerous services of the Transport Department through a smartphone from the comfort of their homes without having to visit the Transport Department 24/7 by 365 basis. At the same time, without compromising on the accuracy or process efficiency. FEST service is provided through T-App Folio, the M-Governance initiative of Government of Telangana. Citizens need to submit details such as name, father's name, address, driving license or learning license number, address proof, and upload a selfie and all the required documents for that particular service. FEST processes the provided information using a 3-factor authentication by leveraging state-of-the-art technologies. Artificial intelligence-based liveness check to ensure that the selfie uploaded is from a live person at that moment and not a photograph or a selfie taken earlier. This is the most important test since the identification is done remotely. Big data based demographic check to match names in application and department database handling multiple name variations. Deep learning based image comparison to match selfie with photograph in the department database handling many variations in the photos. Post successful 3-factor authentication. The citizen can pay the service fee through a smartphone and avail the service. Launched in July 2020, 17 services across 4 categories: driving license, learner license, registration and permit are offered through FEST as of now. More services are scheduled for release in due course. Transport Department envisions that all services except where driving test or physical inspection of the vehicles is involved will be provided in a contactless and presence-less manner through FEST. FEST is gaining traction and present daily transactions are now around 400. About 300 driving licenses are being renewed on Sundays. A driving license renewal through a smartphone from home on an office holiday, which was unthinkable, is now made possible through leveraging the power of the emerging technologies. Telangana Transport Department is the first in the country to build this kind of platform leveraging emerging technologies to provide contactless, presence-less and paperless services to citizens, making government services efficient, convenient and transparent. Telangana has launched similar applications in other departments. Pensioners' Life Certificate through Selfie was launched in 2019. About 80,000 pensioners have used it so far till July 2021, some of them being outside India. Registration for Degree Online Services Telangana in 2020 and 2021. About 45,000 students have used this application. Authentication of voters in 10 polling booths in municipal elections in January 2020.
It's very pleasure for selecting Kompally for launching of the pilot program of this app. That is a T-App Folio, and it's the voter face authentication app. So by that, when the voter comes down to the PS, he can enjoy, he can cast the vote by having the mobile camera capture app, that is which cannot be downloaded from the Play Store. It was only been a program done by the TSTS, that is Telangana State Technology Services only.
A pilot project for voting through smartphones is being done in collaboration with IIT Chennai. Here, RTDAI is being used for identification along with blockchain for storing and non-tampering of data after voting. All these are path-breaking initiatives relevant to all states of India and are applicable in many other countries too for transparent and convenient service delivery. Even globally, there are very few examples of how AI, ML, and deep learning are used in conjunction with M-governance in citizen services. With unstinting support from the Honorable Minister for IT and all other departments, Telangana has become a pioneer in the use of emerging technologies. Telangana has declared the year 2020 as the year of AI and unveiled an AI framework for use of AI in the government. There are 40 crore smartphones in the country and their number is increasing every day. By harnessing the power of AI, ML and deep learning, together with the phenomenal reach of smartphones, a paradigm shift is being brought in the way citizens interact with the government in the state. Marching towards its vision of a digital Telangana, the government dedicates these solutions to the citizens of Telangana for a hassle-free tomorrow through presence-less, contactless and paperless delivery of government services anytime and anywhere, 24/7/365.
Thank you. I think the video was not, I think it did not play well. But it's available in YouTube, so all of those interested may see. So just to summarize, I don't want to take more time. The whole effort has been that nobody should visit a government office or even and ultimately all services of the government should be available through a smartphone. And the present practice of trying to ask citizens to visit office for the mere purpose of identification should be dispensed with, and citizens should visit a government office for a service only if there is something more than just authentication. So, for example, in case of first-time driving license, we are asking them to come because we need, the transport department officials will check their driving skill. That part is fine. But in a renewal, nothing is done. Likewise, in passport renewal, actually nothing is done. Why should a citizen visit? So this was exactly the whole, the concept with which we have built in the last, let's say, 2 to 3 years, and it's a very unique examples of how the there are a lot of examples where people talk about using of AI, ML, deep learning, big data, etc. But most of them has been in agriculture, health, and law enforcement. But there are hardly any examples in India, even globally, where these are used in citizen service delivery. And I think that's what is unique to the work done by Telangana. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Right, right, sir. Sir, we also have with us Sir L. Ramadevi, who is the Emerging Technology Director, Emerging Technologies and OSD, Department of IT. Sir, sir just spoke about the new and emerging technologies, sir. So, how do you see with these disruptive technology and the associated frameworks gaining traction? How well prepared are the governments, so to say, because citizens have had very good exposure to these technologies through various means. How do the governments of today match the digital landscape, both in terms of pace as well as evolution? And with such huge areas, demographies, how do we ensure that these changes that can be possibly affected by the emerging technologies, be it terms of service delivery or in terms of accessibility, they reach the intended
Abhishek.
beneficiaries, the intended audience without any loss in time?
Abhishek, I think so. Ramadevi ma'am has not joined. She is in a meeting.
That's okay.
So
That's
you
okay.
can
If I may,
you
if
can
I may
put it to
redirect
Vijay.
this question to Santulan sir. Santulan sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
So, Delhi government, thank you very much, first of all, to all the respected panelists. They have given lots of insight what is done elsewhere in the country. The topics which are touched right now, they have been done in Delhi also. Like faceless services in Delhi are now provided by the transport department, and more than 34 services, as Mr. Reddy told, is also in Delhi, where public is not coming to office and everything is faceless. Delhi government also on each tick platform has done 400 plus services online, where people can very well apply, and the service can be delivered digitally, and there's no need to come to office. But this is the present, sir. What the future? So future, these services of the government should be, as rightly said, faceless. There's no need to come to office, and they should be smooth and proactive also. This proactiveness is very important, sir, because many services are not actually required. When I say 400 services, 500 services are online, so there are many services which are not actually required to be done. For example, if a birth certificate is there, then why not caste certificate can be combined with both? Because caste is also same when you born. So you take a father's caste basically, or your mother caste. Okay, so many so there's need to basically consolidate and to process linear basically to get the services minimal, and these minimal services should be faceless. This is one future, because transformation, Mr. Reddy rightly told that this is journey, it will keep on going. As long as technology is concerned, they will keep on changing. Like in Delhi also, we have done this faceless, we have got state of art GIS maps in Delhi, and application on top of GIS application are available and they are working. and people are using. So most important thing what no, Revati ma'am also touched upon is the data. Data is most important, and its privacy, because now we are generating lots of data, especially after corona pandemic, and data was created like anything. So data is there now. Its privacy is the major concern, and while we are talking about the faceless services, and we are talking about other facilities which are giving to the citizens to apply, same time the profiling of the citizens, which we have to avoid that, and the identifiers through which we identify the citizen are to be very, very careful in ensuring that the data which is collected, it is used for the same purpose. It is not used any other purpose. Second, most important thing what I feel that we are collecting data more than what we actually need to process the applications. So we have to control ourselves while we are designing the forms, we are designing the databases, that for a particular service, the first priority should be that data should be collected, data should be taken from other databases which are already data is available with you, right? After that, if some data is at all required for that processing of that application, only that data should be taken. So one day will come when you apply and you don't need to give any data, just to simply say I want the certificate, and all data is available with the government, and government is just give you certificate without any time. Just to take this, some esteemed panel also told that time of giving services, like in Delhi, this is time bound delivery of the services act is there. So that modification in the timelines should be done depending on the touch points which is the process is going on. And believe when everything is digitized and data is available with the government in different databases in different format, I am sure that delivery time will be reduced uh, ultimately to the instant delivery of the services.
Right, sir.
So Delhi government is doing on that, and lots of work we are doing it. But the future is not the services. Future is that we have to give all these services proactively. That proactive
Right,
word
sir.
is very important. That where the public, the citizens should not demand for that service. As soon as they demand, the service is given. So
Yes,
that
yes.
proactiveness of the governance is now is the future basically. Thank
Fair
you.
point, sir. Fair point. So, from a service delivery point of view, that was very insightful, which brings us to the poster boy, if I may call so, of today. That's the information security, data security, ensuring data integrity, sir. So, we have with us Mr. Brijesh Miglani, he is senior cybersecurity strategist at Netscope. So, Brijesh, if I may direct a few questions, because data security and information security have now become synonymous with any big digital transformation. So, do you see any challenges in incorporating security in the design phase itself of these digital transformation programs? And how, if you could throw some light on how frameworks like SASE and zero trust architecture will help the government agencies with regards to the risks that emerge from undertaking such digital transformations.
Yeah, sure, Abhishek. So I think one thing I really like to see the inputs from all the panelists, the way our states are growing. So our India are going and moving towards more digital enabled India, right? So the point is, the first thing that you mentioned, we all talk about that when any initiatives we are driving towards a digital transformation, security should be a part of design. Okay. Why this point comes into picture? Because till this time, I think, if I'll say from the last 2 years and more, the security was not taken as a business enabler, right? So, and in the pandemic days, we all understood that security really helped us, right? Where the people start working from home or working from anywhere. Those are the security things which really drive the digital transform. If you take an example which just we got from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, they have rightly used those security attributes. So identity is one piece of it, right? So they have very well used identity, that this identity can be used for the better user context, right? So we all understood that till this time, when the all the design were framework was purely infra-centric, right? The focus was purely to be do some certain things based on the access piece of it, right? We all started in the cyber security framework from an access piece of it, and that's where the initial problem statement we have seen in Arunachal Pradesh and Mizoram, right? So they are purely focusing on first to bring a connectivity, right? And Revati madam also mentioned that if you have a better connectivity and better data points, then you go into a data layer, so over the content piece of it. And the one thing which I think Mr. Chobe also mentioned, that once you have a content, once you have a data, how you can be more proactive, how you can bring more context. So if I'll touch upon very briefly on the frameworks which laid down in the last 3-4 years and more, we all were designing our security architecture on NIST platforms, right? Which will be detect, defend kind of an approach, right? Now, when the Kata came into picture around 4 years back, the focus was that in a security, you have two attributes which are common. One is risk and other is trust. So risk can be based on the threat, risk can be based on your data, and the trust based on your users, right? That users can be your end users, that users can be your own administrators, which are typically managing your servers and all. So the focus was that in a kata, your risk and trust needs to be continuously monitored. So when you say continuously monitor, you are moving from a detective approach to a proactive approach, which Mr. Chobe has mentioned, right? So that's a very important aspect which framework also led down. And then when you are giving something, don't trust blindly, right? 3 years back, we were talking about trust piece of it, right? We were bringing identity, authentication, another layer. And now, in the last year, when zero trust came into picture, we will say always trust, right? Never just bring on an implicit trust. Always do an explicit trust, right? So the Carta lays that foundation. Then the SASE, which introduced in 2019, was focusing in that all this type of data that we are churning, okay, in a government world, from a images, textual images, to a data, to a land records and all that, that all data needs to go to a data lake, right? You need more elasticity, you need more you can say more processing power, more compute power. So the people started adopting some cloud based frameworks, right? Whether those are over Azure or AWS or any other platforms, right? So the point is, the SASE talk about when you are moving to those platforms, take the security along with that platforms as well. Focus on the security aspects as well. Take the security, which will also bring you better data protection, better security, and better context into what device you are using, into what users are interacting with the data. Then go into a data layer with your AI, ML, OCR kind of a technology, and build a proactive framework. Okay, so these frameworks are purely
Hello,
used,
Hanji.
pretty much adopted now in all the sectors. So those are not only limited to corporate now. I think in government and whatever we have seen, the things which are running within Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, or any other states are purely the replicas of those frameworks.
Correct. I tend to agree with you on this. So, with regards to this, how do you see the transition or transformation, especially with regards to security? How should security be designed? When the government agencies are adopting new tech, and not just cloud, for the workloads such as IES infrastructure, other, I mean, PaaS for that matter. And how do you see from a convergence point of view it will shape up, especially I won't say from access, but then especially from the data point of view.
So first of all, whether it's an IAS, PaaS, or any other kind of platform that you are using where your data is, right? Because now with the initiatives which we have seen, there will be a next step where we will be very worried where our data is and how compliant it is, right? Because of the statutory guidelines and other compliances which we have to follow. There will be a need to segregate the privacy data and other data as well, right? And data privacy, we all know, we all are discussing and will going in a big way. So how the security is designed when you are adopting any platform, okay, just focus on what data you are storing there. Use certain API tools. So there are technologies in the market like what we also do, which typically do a posture check, right? A posture check of a data which is lying there. So you can do an API call and it can tell you that these are the different types of data which is lying there. You can do a tagging of data, classifying that data if it's non-textual, also that this is my critical data, non-critical data, this is my for some specific purpose. So there are compliance attributes. One major piece which is also coming into picture and which leading to the different kind of breaches in the past is a misconfigurations, right? So one is a data attribute of it, which can be done with the compliance based templates, which can be done with the different fingerprinting based mechanisms, and you can use AIML there. But there are issues when you go and configure certain IS attributes. So yes, then in that case, you can use certain frameworks. So you can have a NIST frameworks, you can have a CSA benchmarks, templates, which can be used against those platforms within your network to tell you what are the best practices of managing it. Like few of the government departments are also moving maybe to Office 365 slowly and gradually, right? Where BFSI sector has also moved. So what are the best practices of managing your Office 365? So the point is, whatever the thought that we have bring it from the compliances when we were managing that data on premise, same compliance is now available on the cloud, where you can do an API call and create a security posture check in case of your data risk as
well. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think we still have a minute left. So if I may invite Ajay sir for some final comments based on the discussion that we have had with some very fine comments from the panelists here.
I would say that what we were discussing were basic services, except for Telangana and security, of course, Miglanji ji. What we have to think in terms of vision for the future, most important part is robotic process automation is happening in the private sector, and there is a lot of scope to use this in the government sector. So many of our forms, they are coming, we are making data entry of those forms, and then there are errors in that. Now private sector is doing through RPA. Number one. Number two, we have to talk of API based integration. Revati madam talked in the beginning. That is very, very crucial. Today, people are getting data, keeping data in silos, and we are uploading them through Excel. That is very poor productivity. So we have to have API based integration. Then we have to think of artificial intelligence based solutions, whether it is healthcare, whether it is education. So much is there. And I would say when we started the topic, I thought we would be talking of future. We have concentrated a lot on services that we are delivering and what we do, what we intend to do in the next few years. But the future is not these services. Future is all about AI, blockchain, cloud, edge computing, etc. And lots is happening in the corporate sector. We have to imbibe it in the government sector. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Over to Revati ma'am. Revati ma'am, if we could have some final comments on what Ajay sir just said. How do we prepare ourselves better to embrace these new technologies? Because the corporate sector has been, growing leaps and bounds the way they have been adopting and in multitudes for that matter. How do you see governments warming up to these new technologies and with regards to adoption and using those technologies for the welfare of the general population, ma'am?
Yeah, so particularly if you consider governance, Abhishek, the magnitude of processes or the reachability is so huge. I mean, you run across each and every process, and government is there. From water to healthcare to education, I mean, we are there everywhere. So technology and very importantly, coupled, I would say this one future decade is going to be of AI, IoT, and robotics. These three technologies are going to revolutionize our future. Very, very correctly, as Ajay said, ki the future belongs to these three technologies. I mean, that's how we all can see it now. Categorically, how governments are warming up, I think now the acceptability is already there. That these three technologies or technologies surrounding these things are going to be the future of all. I would just, as a closing remark, like to bring to this panel that there are a few challenges which we all need to look at when we are taking these whole leap of change which is happening. Uh, AI, particularly the way we are going to transition, we are looking at driverless cars, teacherless schools, and to some extent schoolless schooling also. So, I mean, this kind of a paradigm shift, the main implication is going to be unemployment, which we as because of the efficiency of all these technologies that will come in the processes. So this is one aspect we all need to be looking at, a major challenge that we need to be looking at. Second, and importantly, I think certain industries like tourism, we realized that after implementing AI to big extent, we need to have a very fine balance, even in education to quite an extent, I'll say this, Abhishek. The balance between human touch remaining in the system and where we stop this to bring in complete intervention of technology, there has to be some kind of balance also maintained in the future. Because if robotics and AI take over the complete scenario, somewhere balancing has to be taken care of. So I think these two notes are, that's all I like to close.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. I feel from the discussions that we have just had, I feel contextualizing the technology offerings is going to hold the key, and how we customize those to meet our specific requirements is also going to be as important. So I think we have had a very interesting discussion. We have already overshot by 5 minutes, I guess. It has been a very interesting discussion where ideas have been firing, and each of the panelists have had riveting things to say. And the way everyone got involved with some great comments and insights, it was great to see. I'm sure this is just the start of the conversation, though, and we shall take this opportunity to reach out to each other when required. Now that we know we have gained acquaintance, and I'm sure the audience would also have used this opportunity to learn new things and gain insights that will hold them in good stead in the times to come. Thank you very much for your time, all panelists. And we have more sessions lined up after this for you to benefit from. So please stay tuned. And it's a good day from my side. Thank you. Thank you, Fahim. Fahim, over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
have,
Thank you. Thank you.
we have a small certificate for everyone, e-certificates. So I would request just 2 minutes more. So my backend team, if you can just present the e-certificates. We'll start with Revati ma'am. Backend team.
Certificate entonces.
Revati ma'am, thank you. Thank you for your presence. We'll be emailing you this certificate too.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So next, I would like to present the certificate to Mr. Santulan Chaube, sir. Thank you, Santulan, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I would like to present a small certificate to Ajay, sir. Ajay, sir, we have known each other since such a long time, and sir has always been there for us.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Backend team, Ajay sir, thank you. Then Dr. Lalishwara Moana, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Kindly send us those certificates.
We will do that, sir. We'll email it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Then we have got Brijesh.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Brijesh. And I think so. The speakers have left. So the last is as Abhishek has joined in terms of in place of Amit. So we can put in Amit, and we'll share. We'll send you Abhishek. Will send you this thing also. Can we put Amit?
No problem. No problem. Fine. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure moderating this.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.